Today's episode of Baxi's Musical Podcast is brought to you by Canna Provisions. Canna Provisions is an adult-use cannabis dispensary with the largest selection of cannabis products in Western Mass, with both locations in Holyoke and in Lee. In fact, they're not just a dispensary, they're a destination. Visit cannaprovisions.com. That's cannaprovisions.com. Adults 21, please, and please consume responsibly. And now, time for Baxi's Musical Podcast.
It's Baxi's Musical Podcast.
Hey, here's a fact for you. When a guitar goes out of tune, it's usually a pretty simple fix. You either tighten the strings or loosen them or replace them with new ones. When a drum set starts to sound a little goofy, you can retune the heads or replace them with new ones. But with the human voice, the only thing that you can really rely on is you. You either warm up your vocal cords and get them ready, and you hope that the audience doesn't notice, which they will because that's what they do, which is why you might notice how crappy my COVID-negative sounding voice sounds here today. But when a singer comes around and accumulates 20 years of praise for the power and the quality of his voice, when his voice is placed at the same level as the late Chris Cornell of Soundgarden or the late Jeff Buckley, when guys like Brian May of Queen want to collaborate with you, it ain't just about your skills in adjusting your auto-tune settings. Because I'm pretty sure a guy like Brian May knows a thing or two about working with dudes with unbelievable voices. When the level of your talent is praised to that degree by that many people, it's usually because you can sing your ass off. Which brings us to Jimmy Gnecco of the band Hours. For the last 20 years, Jimmy Gnecco hasn't just been blowing people away with his incredible vocals. He's also a multi-instrumentalist and a great songwriter as well, so much so that the Hours debut album, Distorted Lullabies, is still considered a classic today. Last year, Jimmy Gnecco and Hours released their self-titled 6th studio album. But due to COVID restrictions, it's only been now that the band has been able to get on the road and give the album its proper amount of attention and promotion, with a brief tour that recently took them through Cambridge and other places as well. This is my conversation with the ridiculously talented singer Jimmy Gnecco from Hours on Baxi's Musical Podcast.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Jimmy, how you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good.
You see, now that you see me, you see what's going on?
Oh, you're driving?
Yes.
I'll try not to distract you while you're driving.
I'm not going to look at you much, but I'll be here with you the whole time.
That's fine. Who's in the car with you?
The rest of the band.
Well, I'm glad I got everybody here. But it's good to talk to you.
You too, man.
I've been spending the last couple of weeks, diving into things and really kind of diving into the new record, which I like a lot. This record came out last May. It's got to feel good, even if you're driving with your band in a van, to get on the road and finally work this thing. Tell me about what's been going on and finally getting out on the road with this.
Yeah. Well, we kind of took ourselves off the road a bunch of years ago, as it was even long before COVID. We've kind of been spending the last just about decade in the recording studio, a place that I have, and studio that I kind of grew up recording in. I recorded a lot of the other records there as well, even though when we recorded with Lily White or Rick Rubin, I still did work in the studio on certain songs. So I got the room back a bunch of years ago and decided to just spend as much time as we could recording, because we had so many songs to catch up on, and the process with the record company and all really dragged things out too much for us. To give you an idea, I signed with DreamWorks. It was 1997. The first record didn't come out until 2001, and then we toured for about a year, and then we did our second record pretty quickly, too quickly in my opinion, because they wanted to kind of rush it out to follow up the hit that we had, and we just didn't finish that record in my opinion. So then we went out to make a record with Rick Rubin, and that was another like 6 years it took. So everything was taking too long, in my opinion. Just wanted to get off the hamster wheel with the labels and that machine because it wasn't working for us. So basically, with this group, this is the longest, most consistent group that we've ever had. So for us, which is why I'm out here in the middle of a snowstorm driving the van with the band. It feels like we're starting over, like we're 18 years old and putting a band together. And so basically, we're kind of ready to go out during COVID, but it did obviously, put us off another 2+ years with
Right.
everything. So in that time, just decided to kind of record even more music, and that's why the record's so long. But basically, we're out here really enjoying it. I'm enjoying it more than I ever have through our whole time because the music feels right, the band feels right, and so yeah, we're having a blast doing it, and that's basically what we're doing here, kind of starting over. The new music is, in a sense, there's a connection to it from the past, from our first record, but it's a whole new spirit. So it's kind of like, I wouldn't say we reinvented ourselves. I feel like we kind of invented ourselves finally. We're enjoying it.
Well, it feels like you refound your steps, like if you found your footing again. And as I was listening to it, and the first track, your voice is just killing it. It's a long record, and it's divided up into 3 distinct sections. Tell me about the decision to do it that way, because it feels more like it's about how you are feeling in multiple sections.
Well, they were, as there usually is with what we do. There's a large spectrum of different kinds of songs. We don't do any one kind of song and like do a whole record that way. There's always a whole different range. So we're kind of used to that. But what was happening was it felt like some of it felt like there should be different records, but it was the challenge that I took on to see if we could put it together and have it feel like a play, like a play would, run, to where, the beginning kind of happens as a big call to arms, and even like a big movie, comes out. There's a lot of action at first, and then you kind of get into a little bit more of the story, and so that's kind of what it is. It's like the first part comes out in a space that feels really uplifting and positive, and then we kind of go down deep into it, and for the whole middle of the record there, and it gets the narrative of it feels a little heavy, and then the final part of it is kind of coming out of the darkness. So that's the main like layout of it. But it was really difficult to sequence because we could have started right away pretty dark and then
Right.
just gotten positive as it went on. But we've done stuff like that before, and I was really feeling that I wanted to feel joy and hope and the sense of being elated right from the top, rather than starting too dark or too intense emotionally. I wanted it to feel exciting, but light in your heart, to make it play out that way. It kind of, we look at it in like 3 chapters.
When I started listening to it the first time around, you're listening to the first track on the record, and you're just you're blasting the piss out of that song with your voice, and it's fantastic. But I noticed that like you say, I mean, there's a lot of things going on. There are different kinds of songs and the different kinds of emotions that get tracked through this thing. I remember years ago there was a quote that Bono from U2 had talked about, that he felt like he could get just as much emotion out of a whisper as he could with a scream and his voice. And it sounds like that's something that you also feel, because I mean, there's a lot of tonality. There's a lot of textures in how you sing each one of these songs. You're using the voice to serve the song rather than the other way around. And I know there's a big temptation for a lot of singers to do just that, where they over sing it rather than just play with what's in front of them. You see it that way too?
I do. I really try to. I try to be cautious to not be too much of an acrobat with my voice because I mean I think part of it is fun and intriguing and in that Freddie Mercury kind of way, and I think it's powerful when done right. And I think Freddie did it right, and like something like George Michael, using the range to show the emotion rather than to show off. And I try. I do my best to stay within that kind of mindset where we have all these different textures that we can use to paint, to paint different emotions. So whether it is a whisper or a growl or a really pretty falsetto, there's a lot of different textures to that are out there. And so I really do try to use them, but I do my best to not get to the point where people, where it feels like too much like a showing off thing. I don't really like that.
Whenever I talk to a vocalist, I always wonder, at what point in your life do you realize that first of all, that you have this gift? Everyone thinks they can sing, but when you've got a guy who can actually do it and you realize, hey, I can not only sing, but I can sing with emotion and power and tenderness all at once. I mean, that is something that had to develop over time. But at what point in your life did you say, I might be pretty good at this?
Well, still, with not being, not trying to be cheeky or anything, but genuinely, I'm still working on it every day to grow and to get better at it. But that there was a defining time for me. I was around 18 years old when I felt that I was starting to get the hang of it and I was getting control of my voice. And, like what I heard in my head, I was actually able to do. It was around 18 and 18, 19. And then I really took it serious. It was so extreme with the maintenance of my voice and my health and all of that. And that's been helpful through my life to do that, to take care of it. I was never a big partier. Like through that time of really developing my voice, I drink now and I enjoy to do it when I do it, but I've always tried to preserve as much of it as I can. I'm never really, like I said, big into like drugs or smoking or anything like that. So there was a period of time when we were out after we did the Mercy record where I was grinding my voice so hard every night and pushing it to the point of genuinely feeling like, oh, I don't think I'll ever sing again in my life after tonight.
Wow.
With how hard I was pushing it. And I had to take these years to build it back, to tell you the truth, to get back to where I was singing again and not just like, screaming my face off. It's a work in progress.
I've read a lot about the comparison that you get all the time, and you must be kind of tired of this, but the comparison between you and Jeff Buckley, and I suppose in some ways I can see it, but in other ways I hear a lot more than just the Jeff Buckley in your voice. At its lowest register, I can hear a little Mark Lanigan. At the highest, I can hear Bruce Dickinson. I can hear a lot of different influences in how you sing. But yet the Buckley comparison keeps coming up. Do you think it's a fair comparison to draw parallels between the two of you?
I think that if you are just a basic listener of a certain kind of music or something, I think that it's an easy one. It would be like me saying that, Dr. Dre sounds like Run DMC or something. If I didn't really know the ins and outs of and the subtleties of different artists, I don't know if that's a good comparison or not, but something like that, where you're maybe not familiar with a genre or way of singing, So like hip hop to me, I can say, well, a lot of it sounds the same, but I think, like you just said, I think it's slightly a lazy one at times by people. But I get it. And I really loved him, greatly. And, not just his music or his voice, but I really cared for him, and we were all really devastated when we lost him, and we're all very close to it. Jeff and I had the same manager when he died, and so it was really close to home. And I knew that there would be those comparisons, especially once he was gone, and that people would be very territorial and protective of him, to where they would kind of want to dislike us for that reason. And I think it's been a little unfair, because I think that people like Tom York, and I love Radiohead, but I think people like Tom York, Chris Martin, Coldplay, Muse, I think that they've all copped Jeff's thing, and they get away with it, and they can say how much they loved him and inspired, but they get away with it. But for some reason, people like to pound me on it and try to keep me down. But I was doing this long before I heard of him, and singing in this way. So,
Well, and that's kind of why I asked about it, because as I said, to me, there's just a whole lot more than that, and it does seem to be, like you say, a lazy, comparison. I mean, you both have incredible voices. I mean, certainly he did, but yours
he was amazing.
absolutely amazing, and a great guitar player too. But it sounds like
Great guitar player.
your voice is slightly more controlled, because in Jeff's album, his one and only album, you could hear where at any point his voice could have gone way off the rails. But I don't get that sense when I hear you sing. Like it does seem to be like you've captured exactly what your voice should be, and maybe Jeff wasn't even at that point yet in his career where he could do that.
Yeah, I think he was about to get even more amazing. I really do. Because if you listen to the Shanae recordings, and then you listen to Grace, and then the live stuff from Grace, how much he grew even in that time, and how much control he got over his voice during that time, pretty unbelievable. But yeah, I think I'm a little, funny enough, I think I'm a little more like husky or something. I got a little more of a little more Thor in me,
Yeah.
vocally.
Well, that's why I kind of drew the Mark Lanigan comparison. I mean that guy was singing like there was fire in his throat. But when you're down in the lower registers, it was like I could hear a little bit of it.
I really love that register, so I like to spend a lot of time there. And even like our speaking voices were so different, Jeff's and I just think, to a more educated listener, like you can just pick it up and say, nah, I can see the similarities, but come on, there's a lot more in there. And I'm just in search of those people, basically, that actually give us a chance.
Yeah.
And it's been an uphill battle for a really long time, and frustrated me for a long time, because, like I said, it was lazy. And then there were other rumors with it, even that I was his roadie, and that's why I sing like this, and that used to frustrate me, because I was like, well, I wasn't his roadie, and even if I was, that doesn't. You don't wake up and then all of a sudden I carried his amp and then I can sing like him.
Right.
They like to, some people like to make this whole other story, like, that guy was like some Padawan of his or something like that. And it's just it's not true. So that's more what bothers me. But good company. If anybody, says Jeff and Bono and Michael Hutchence and Tom York and even Bruce Dickinson, or Jeff Tate, Freddie Mercury. Like, I'm in good company. Robert Plant. I've kind of heard it all. Lanigan. So there's a new one, and I toured Lanigan, and I really liked him. That was crushing. But I kind of have heard it all. But when I heard Jeff, I heard Smokey Robinson, like, ooh, baby. So I heard Smokey Robinson, Robert Plant, Nina Simone, Edith Piaf. That's like what I heard in Jeff. And at times, I can't tell the difference between, Lilac Wine and his or Nina's.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to hammer on the Buckley thing forever here, because I do think that like I said, I understand the comparison. I don't 100% agree with it. I mean, there's a lot of things to compare you to, and Jeff Buckley isn't the defining punctuation mark on what you do by any means. I do want to talk though.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to talk about Distorted Lullabies. I know you guys have been performing it live during this tour, and last year it
Yes.
celebrated its 20th anniversary. That's an album that emotionally connected with people 20 years ago, and it still does that today. But what's really interesting to me about that record is, there was a lot of interest in you early on, and you got Steve Lillywhite to produce it, which I think is freaking awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
he worked with you too in the Talking Heads and XTC. And tell me about working with Jeff Lillywhite in your first record.
I obviously loved his work with you too. And I really loved what he was doing with Morrissey at that time.
Mm.
He had done Vauxhall and I, which was one of my favorite records at that time. And he did the next Morrissey. And so basically what happened with Lillywhite, we went in for 7 weeks, and we got a lot done. But we didn't make the record. It kind of got finished, in my opinion, got finished the most effectively when I kind of just went home and did it. Like, I recorded a few of those songs without any producers or anything, just my buddy helping me, who's an engineer and by my side. You can call him a co-producer for sure, but without any like big, well-known producers. I did Sometimes, I'm a Monster, parts of Drowning, like the end of Drowning. So that was when I actually felt like I found my footing.
Yeah.
Like when I was able myself to get in there and record everything exactly how I wanted to and finish it how I wanted to. And it wasn't a long process. Like, song like I'm a Monster took us around 2 or 3 days, and same with Sometimes, 2 or 3 days to finish. So, people, may have the impression that the record took a long time, but it wasn't that we took a long time working. It was we took a long time getting the record label to be convinced that I was ready to make a record. So when I got tired of waiting after a year, it was just over a year that I'd signed, and I still hadn't gone in the recording studio. And so I just finally made a demo, because we didn't have a demo when I signed with DreamWorks. Finally went in, I recorded around 4 or 5 songs on my own. And I went to my A&R and I said, I want you to send this out to this. And I gave him a list of producers: Steve Lillywhite, John Leckie, who had done Floyd, Radiohead, the Bends, the Verve stuff, Ed Buller, who was doing Suede records, and I love Suede.
Right.
And Jerry Harrison, the Talking Heads, who had done the live records, because I also love the live records. So I was trying to find common ground with at least. I was struggling to find a producer that I really wanted to work with other than Rick Rubin, because I was going to sign with Rick, but he was going through Columbia. And because I didn't sign with him, he couldn't make the record yet. And so after that, I was kind of down in the dumps. I was going to meet with Flood, also because I love Flood. I love Lanois, but my A&R guy believed that if I recorded with Lanois, that it would be too mature of a record, and he wanted a rock record from me, which is not what they got at the end of the day.
I was gonna say they only got a record that people are still talking about 21 years later.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was going to be leaning more towards urgent songs, call them rock or whatever, or if it was going to be like a classical record or something. I had no idea. I just knew that it was going to be very personal and true. And very exposing in the sense of emotions. And so however we were going to address it, it remained be seen. But so yeah, so a few of the producers heard that recording. Lily White called me right away and said, I want to make your record. Do you have any more songs? And I said, sure. And I recorded another 14 or so, sent them to him right away, just a vocal and guitar. Calls me back that night and he says, with your voice, your songs, my expertise, I think we'll make an amazing record. And he's a trip. I really love Lily White. But in old truth, like I said, he did a good chunk of it with me, but we had to really work on it still after that. So, we had a blast doing it. But like I said, it wasn't until I got, and I think there's some artists that can probably relate to this, that I didn't feel like the satisfaction until I had the free reign to like really do it how I wanted to. And so sometimes, as an example, there was no producer on that. Just did it.
And it still sounds awesome even after all these years, man. It's a hell of a song. I want to hear a little bit about the collaboration you did with Brian May. Tell me about that, because I mean I think that guy's worked with good vocalists in the past.
The best of the best, yeah. Well, so Brian actually came to the project after. What happened? They were doing a soundtrack for Spider-Man, and I guess Sony was making the album, and Rick was involved in it, and they already had an Audio Slave song on the record, and so they knew that they had this song that Chris Cornell and Alan wrote, and they were trying to figure out who to sing it. And somebody, had said Eddie Vedder, and Rick basically jumped up for me because he heard the song, and the song reminded him of Ours music, already. He was like, he just heard it, and he said, there's only one singer on the planet to sing this song. So that was all Rick's doing. So, like I said, Chris and Alan wrote it. Rick fought for me to do it and won. And so after we did it, I mean, it was really amazing because one of my heroes from Jellyfish, Roger Manning, the piano player, and singer, he's sang with Andy, but so he plays piano on it. And, we're kind of just like going over it in Rick's house while he's playing the piano. And it's what a moment. And then we finished it all. Even like Dave Sardi even played rhythm guitar on it. And it was really amazing. We did it at Sound City. And so it's finished. And Rick had said that he was also working with Weezer at the time. And he said that Rivers said that he would play a solo on it if we wanted him to. And I said, oh, that's cool. I like how he plays guitar. I play a lot of guitar, but for some reason it wasn't being acknowledged. And I really didn't care, to tell you the truth. I don't have an ego about any of that stuff, like whatever's best for it. So Rick said, I'm thinking about Brian May. And I just kind of like, so if you can get him. And so he did. And Brian played on it. And then after I heard what Brian played, I'm like, oh, I have to re-sing this whole thing now. He elevated it,
Right.
And I would have personally liked to even go a little bit more back and forth just to see, but I think we did a great job on it. I really enjoy it. And when I first heard Brian play, though, I've told this story, but it's funny. I felt like it sounded a little phoned into me. Because it sounded so good, you forget, how good he is. And it's become, for me, like Brian was my favorite guitar player on the planet, and Rick didn't even know this. So again, Rick's instincts were really great. So I said to Rick, I said, I don't know, it kind of just sounds like a B-side Queen song or something to me. And Rick was like, really? I said, let me listen to it again. And then I listened again and I said, no, I was wrong. It's so good. It's so good that it sounded, I've really tried to not make music that was too commercial for most of the early years with us. And so it was sounding so normal to me because it was so good, you know. It's like somebody like Phil Collins, it sounds so normal, but you don't really know how great he
As
is.
a drummer, yeah.
And what, yeah, with all of it, that it's like he made it sound easy, and that's what Brian did. It just like he made it sound so great. And yeah, so that was basically it. I was hoping that, you know, I would do more with them, because I had a few people asking me through the years to you know, do singing things with them, and I was really hoping that Queen would be one of them, because they hadn't really found anybody, and I thought George Michael was going to be the one to do it. I think Lambo does a good job, but there's no, you know, that's just a whole different thing too, in my opinion. It's like, you know, it's Queen with Adam Lambert, and that's cool that they're out playing the songs and everything.
You mentioned, and I'm glad you did, because I actually interviewed him about a year and a half ago, was Roger Manning. A huge Jellyfish fan, and you know, love the two records. Even interviewed Jason Faulkner a couple of times too.
Love Faulkner.
Faulkner's awesome, and you know, that's a band that to this day I don't know why they weren't successful, because especially the second record, Spilt Milk, I think is like one of the most brilliant records ever recorded.
Ever.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable
Yeah.
how much they threw into all of those songs. Incredible.
Yeah. And to have Albie on that with them, it's just unbelievable. Like the choices that they made and all of it. And, you know, I've spent so much time, like you know, when we first started, I was on MTV a bit, and I'd be on all the rock talk things and 120 minutes. And I would spend most of my time talking about Jellyfish, because I felt like it was my, you know, my duty to let everybody know about Jellyfish, because I feel the same way. Like, but you know, there was something about their lack of success that was really resonating with me, and I felt like, am I going to fall into that same place? Am I kind of a little, you know, too far from the center to, you know, to maybe suffer the same kinds of
Well,
fate?
I think their issues weren't necessarily about being overly commercial. I think a lot of their issues
Right.
were self-induced and just terrible timing. But I mean, you know, there's another record that has built this cult following over the years, that when you do talk to someone who knows that record, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that you not only know that you know that record, but that you feel the same way that I do. I think that's so cool. And when I've talked to those guys, it was a real thrill for me, because it's like, you know, to me, it's like, yeah, how do these guys come up with any of that stuff now?
Totally. It's kind of like watching that you know, this Beatles stuff that came out, like, you know, like just being led into like the process and all that. And I got to also one night, one of the positive nights I left the Sunset Marquee. I left real late, and I was dating John Bonham's daughter for a little bit, Zoe Bonham, and so we went back to her house, and Faulkner and Nigel Godrich, the Radiohead producer, came back, and we just hanging out, maybe drinking a bit, and I can, you know, Zoe was trying to get me to sing for them. She's like, "Oh, Jimmy, you got to sing for them. You got to sing," and I was like, I'll sing if Jason plays King is Half Undressed, and I get to do it with him. So
That's great.
yeah, I love those guys.
I know you're gonna keep on driving here, but as far as the tour goes, I know you're closing things down again. Another date in New York, I think in you know, later in the summertime. Are you looking to add more dates, or is this kind of it for now?
We're open to it. I'd like to go out on a bunch of support dates, just like we used to do. I would like to go support a band, and then give people more time. It seems like there's always like a delayed period of time with people absorbing our records, to where if we go too soon, like right when we made the record, there'll be a handful of real diehard fans that know it, but it seems like we do better when we wait like a year or two to go and tour the record. So we're gonna do some Europe dates, and then maybe some Europe dates with the band as well in the fall, which would be great. Unless something else comes up in the States for us. But yeah, I mean, I think as far as headlining dates, we'll probably wait and let people absorb the music a little bit more, and then look at the new year for if we were going to do any more headlining dates.
Well, Jimmy, like I said, I really do like the new record. I mean, I know it's been out for a
Thank
while,
you.
but it's really, really good. Your voice is, you don't need me to tell you how good you are. I mean, the voice is amazing. And I appreciate the time today. It's always good to catch up with a Jellyfish fan. Always.
Always, yes.
Jimmy, thank you very much. Have a
You're very welcome.
Have a safe drive.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Baxi's Musical Podcast. I hope you liked it. Feel free to share it, subscribe it, review it. Tell all your friends about it. You can email me at bax@rock102.com. I'd love to know what you think. Thanks again to Canna Provisions for their support. You can support them by going to cannaprovisions.com. We'll see you next time on Baxi's Musical Podcast.